Hey, well, kia ora koutou, St. Peter's. No mai hara mai to our virtual devotion. I really hope, again, you are doing well. Hey, look, if you want to get the real flow of what we've been talking about, it might be helpful to go back and watch the first video. But essentially, I began asking, and I wonder if it's true of you, have you ever found yourself meeting someone? Or maybe you don't even physically meet them, but you hear about them or you see them online, and you find yourself making a bunch of snap assumptions about them. Like really quickly summing up, look, would I like you? Would you like me? Would we have a good connection? Social psychologists call this person perception, and it's that different process our mind goes through when we form impressions about someone. And then I asked the question, and I wonder if you found this, are we at risk or is there a possibility we do this with God? Sort of project our perception onto God and what kind of God is and what kind of people God would want to hang out with. See, as a youth worker for almost 20 years, what I've found for so long was that often faith and religion or church was often seen by young people as a place for just those that were most like God or that did God-like things. So the obvious logic was that, well, God would only really like to hang out with people that are like God. Now, what I find fascinating is that in the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, we see Jesus showing us something quite different. Now, I explained yesterday, Jesus is our best evidence of what God is really like. And what we found was that Jesus seemed to like people that were so unlike him. And what was even more kind of shocking and mind-blowing is that people, when they got close to Jesus, people so unlike him liked Jesus. So where we picked up the story was from the book of Matthew, written by Matthew, and it was about Jesus' encounter with this character called Matthew, who was a Jewish tax collector. And I won't go through it all again, but Matthew was was a part of the Jewish community, yet had almost turned his back on the community and to become a tax collector, working for the enemy, working for Rome. So tax collectors were hated. So here we are, we pick up the story where Jesus and his disciples, so Jesus, a rabbi, had his disciples, just students, they came to give their taxes and to this hated man, Matthew, and instead of Jesus kind of burying him or calling him out, Jesus leans in and invites Matthew to follow him, to be one of his students, which was mind-blowing. So my question I left us with was, here's Matthew, despised by his community. His disciples would have been freaking out. Why is Matthew coming with us? And Jesus has made the call. Where do you think they would go next? Where would be the appropriate first place to take Matthew? Like me, maybe you'd think, well, you'd take him to the temple, right? Start to get him to confess all the naughty things that he's done, or cast all those bad demons out of him, or get him to go to back-to-back chapels. That'll get him right. Get him to do some religious things. Surely, I can memorize the 10 Commandments. But do you know where they went? Actually, Matthew invited them back to his house for dinner. Now, if Matthew was throwing a party, because the book of Luke tells us this way, that Matthew threw a party for Jesus. If Matthew was going to throw a dinner party, who would he invite? Yeah, his friends, people like him who shared same interests, same values, and Jesus was there now with tax collectors and other sinners, and he seemed to be fine with it. Actually, in verse 10, it reads this. Later, Matthew invited Jesus and his disciples home as dinner guests, along with many tax collectors and other disreputable sinners. Wow. So you can imagine the disciples freaking out because, they'd left these great fishing jobs and they would have been saying to their rabbi, look, if my mum and dad heard that I was hanging out with people like Matthew, tax collectors, and his friends, they would have a fit. See, the thing is if you're any serious, devout Jewish person, understood that to go and eat with someone and go into their house that was a sinner or a tax collector, they would then become defiled. And this was a huge thing for them because going to the temple was their part of their identity. It was about how they could worship. It was about being a part of the community. Now, Matthew was a tax collector. He couldn't even go into the temple. He was only deemed to be in the outer courts. He was almost like in the outer region of being able to connect with God. So the disciples were furious. But here's Jesus eating with Matthew, tasting his fine wines. Matthew and his friends, this was their moment. They were having dinner with the Messiah, shoulder to shoulder. People so unlike Jesus, liking Jesus, and more mind-blowing, Jesus enjoying himself and liking them. I wonder if you've ever felt yourself or about yourself, maybe unlike Jesus, that you had nothing really common with Jesus or faith, maybe a little bit of an outsider to it all. I really get it. What I think is fascinating about this story and many other stories in the gospel is that Jesus loved spending time with and wanted to connect with people that felt like they had nothing in common with God. So, here's the next part of the story as we wind down. In verse 11, you have these Pharisees, a religious elite. They ask the disciples, why does your teacher eat with such scum? The Message translation says they were having a fit. But because the Pharisees were, as I mentioned, the religious elite of the time, and they felt that they would have been the closest to God because they were trying to do the right things all the time. And to see Jesus at a party with tax collectors and sinners would have made them incredibly angry, because the logic would have essentially gone like this. Look, if Jesus was the Son of God, or even like God, he was at least seen as a holy man, and if he was meant to spend time with anyone, surely he would spend time with those that were most like God. And the Pharisees thought, that is us. But here he was, spending time with people that were most unlike God. So, we then go to verse 12, where Jesus is hearing them have this discussion. He says, look, healthy people don't need a doctor. Sick people do. Healthy people don't need a doctor. Sick people do. It's important to know he's not trying to offend Matthew or his friends. What essentially he's saying is this. He says, I'm here for those that when they're really honest with themselves, know that they're a little unwell within themselves. He's saying, look, my invitation is for those that have stuff going on in their heart and their lives, some broken parts where they have come to a place that they know they can't fix themselves. It's like Jesus saying, look, I'm extending my invitation to those that they look at their relationships, whether it's with their parents or their friends, and they think, this is a shambles, it's such a mess. This is the kind of people that Jesus is extending his invitation to. Jesus says to the Pharisees, look, my invitation is not necessarily for those that are well or think they've got it all together, but it's for those that want to lean into faith and want to follow Jesus. Actually, the verse goes like this. Now, Jesus says, go and learn the meaning of Scripture. I want to show mercy, not offer sacrifices. For I've come to call those who think they are righteous, but not those who think they are righteous, but those who know they are sinners. This is like he's saying, look, my priority is mercy. It's rescue and redemption. I'm not just about rules and routines for the sake of trying to be holy on your own terms. So look, St. Peter's, I hope this is encouraging. I hope that as you look at this encounter with Jesus and Matthew, someone that was so unlike Jesus, unlikely to be invited to follow a rabbi. And what is fascinating for me is that when Jesus said to Matthew, hey, come follow me, come along with us, there was so much going on here. He was saying to Matthew, I believe you've got what it takes to follow me. And did you notice that he didn't ask him to change anything at that moment? He wasn't asking him in that moment to believe any certain things. He just said, come, lean into faith, follow me. Well, may you know that you are fully known and fully loved. May you have an incredible rest of your week. Grace and peace. See you soon.